David Novak is a daddy as well. And I knew that, but then learned more about his particular parenting style this afternoon when I logged onto his website and read some blog posts about telling stories to his own children. And I thought, oh, that's good. When I get together with David, we'll have to talk about telling stories to children. And the further I read, the more frightened I became. Because I feared that I would not be able to keep up. I mean, if you were to ask David Novak whether or not he enjoyed reading Beatrix Potter to his children, you're liable to get an answer that goes something like, quote, in examining a work such as Peter Rabbit, it is important that the superficial characteristics of its deceptively simple plot should not be allowed to distract the reader from the more substantial fabric of its deeper motivations, namely the implications of societal pressures that would drive an otherwise moral rabbit to perform acts of thievery, the dual natures of Mr. McGregor as farmer and humanitarian, and the Freudian overtones of three characters named Flopsy, Mopsy, and When you hear David speak, it's like you went to see Shakespeare performed by the Itsy Bitsy Spider. His style gives the kindergartner an opportunity to converse with the college professor, and the college professor the opportunity to humble himself and return to kindergarten. Please welcome Mr. David Novak.
Okay, I'm going to keep this down here and maybe bring it up just a little bit. All right, I'm going to let you do the dance. Here we go. That's what the first night is for, technical rehearsal. I recognize that quote. That's really Charlie Schultz. But I appreciate the attribution. I will own it now because I do love reading Peter Rabbit, especially to my 5-year-old Jordan. Gets into sleep real fast. And I like that story tying into, many thousands of years ago, the people of Sumer in Mesopotamia say that On and Ki, heaven and earth, were one, the holy mountain, and they were separated by their child, Enlil, who was the wind. And Enlil became the great shaper of the world. For the wind shapes and reshapes the world all around us, and especially these last few days, maybe you've noticed that. They say that Enlil gave us breath, and that our breath makes words. And so that our words have in them the shape-shifting powers of Enlil. For with our words, we shape and reshape our world. There was once a man among the very first people who had cows, marked black and white like day and night. He loved those cows because every morning they gave him sweet cream. So every day he gave them sweet grazing. Took them out to the field where they could graze and graze until they were full and fat and happy. And then in the evening he would bring them home and he would lock them safe in the kraal, and then he would sleep. And as he slept, he would dream of all the sweet cream those cows would give him in the morning. But one morning, he went to milk the cows and found that they were dry. They had no milk. They had no cream. And he thought, I have not been a good enough master. I must find greener pastures. And so he traveled far, seeking sweeter grazing, greener pastures for his cows, and he watched them fill and get full and fat and happy, and he brought them home and he locked them safe, and again he slept. And again he dreamt of sweet cream. But the next morning, again, they were dry, and they had no milk. So he did as he had done before. And again, and again, but again. So he became suspicious. And he did as he always did, grazing his cows and bringing them home. But that night, he did not sleep. Instead, he crept to the place where his cows were kept. And he watched them all night. He watched them all night. He watched them all night. And late into the night, he saw a bright star appear. And as he watched from his hiding place, the star rose swiftly up into the heavens above, and then it stopped. And as he watched from his hiding place, down from that star there descended a long, bright ladder of light. Down from the star, down to his cows. And then as he watched from his hiding place, amazed, down that long ladder of light came many beautiful women, climbing out of the sky, going to his cows, and milking them dry, and then carrying the milk back up into the sky. He leapt from his hiding place. He cried, "Stop, thieves!" But they were quick, and they quickly climbed up away from him. But he was swift enough to catch the last of the woman by the ankle. And he held her fast and would not let her go. And her sisters above pulled the ladder in behind him, and that one woman from the sky fell to the earth. And the man said, "Woman, you have taken from me. You owe me." And the woman said, "You're right. I'm sorry. I will stay here. I will work for you. I will repay this debt my sisters and I owe to you." And the man said, "That is fair." So the man from the earth and that woman from the sky worked side by side for many days, caring for those cows. And never again was he bothered by thieves in the night. But the day came when the man came to the woman. He said, "Woman, you have repaid your debt to me. You are free to go. But if I could have my wish, you would choose to stay. For I have grown very fond of you as we have worked together these many days, and I would be most happy if you would agree to be my wife." And the woman said, "I was hoping you'd say something like that. This is a good world. You're a good man. I will be your wife, if you will make a promise." He said, "Name it." She said, "As you see, I carry with me this basket I bring from the sky. I keep its lid fast upon it. You must promise me never to look inside this basket unless I first bid you to do so." And the man thought, women. Such a silly thing. Such a simple thing. And then the man said, "I promise." So they were married. Oh, and they lived happy together. And soon, they began to grow fat on sweet cream. But, you know what it's like with a secret? Every day that basket stood there. Every night that basket stood there. Never was it opened. Never was it mentioned. And the man began to think, what's with this basket? What is her secret? What is she keeping from me? Why doesn't she trust me? Why should I trust her? And then he began to think, she is my wife. This is my house. This is my basket. And one day when she was out and he was in, he went to the basket, took it from its place, lifted its lid, and looked inside. And he began to laugh. And at the sound of his laughter, his wife came in and said, "Husband, you have broken your promise." "Why?" "Oh, wife, it is true. It is true, I broke my promise. I looked in the basket. But why, really? What was this terrible secret that had you in fear and me in distrust?" "Wife, I looked in this basket, but there is nothing here. As far as I can see, this basket is empty." "Oh, you are so silly. Women are so silly." She said nothing, but replacing the lid upon the basket, lifted it and turned and walked away. Never again was she seen in this world. Ever after that, that man wandered sleepless at night, staring at the sky, looking for something he lost. Now, some people say she left him because he broke a promise. A promise is a promise. Some people say she left him because when he looked inside that basket, he saw nothing there. And it still happens that way. We are all of us, sometimes, blind to the treasures of others. That's an African story told by a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. White guy. South Africa, Zulu. But it is a perennial problem, isn't it? The problem of looking into the sky woman's basket. It's before us all the time, everywhere. I think in some ways, the sciences have understood for a long while that there's more to the physical universe than meets our senses. So they have developed technologies and instruments to help us see beyond our senses. Telescopes, microscopes to go beyond the limits of the eyes. Sonar, radar to go beyond the limits of hearing and so forth. I think stories are our technology for seeing beyond the limitations of our own metaphysical senses. I've been working with the work of and the life of R. Buckminster Fuller over the past couple of years. I really found it quite engaging and interesting. He had a way of seeing the world that was, I find, very compelling, and a way of saying what he saw equally compelling. Fuller said, 99% of who you are is invisible. I guess that's what's in the sky woman's basket. That invisible part. He would say, I don't know what I am. I'm not a thing, a noun. I'm not flesh. Over my lifetime, I will have taken on over 1,000 tons of air, food, and water, which temporarily became my flesh and gradually dissociated from me. Now, you and I seem to be verbs, evolutionary processes. Are we not integral functions of universe? But for all that, I still feel as if that remaining 1% is what mostly holds my attention. And think this past year, that 1% can really be demanding of our attention. I know, that pain was just throbbing in my jaw and radiating up into my head and down to my neck, and I would lie in bed and just feel this pulsing pain throbbing, and I felt as if I was enthralled to some foreign invasion. I felt an infection working its way, and you know what infection is. It's one of those great fears. I mean, this thing from outside of who we are comes into us and starts to take advantage, starts to exploit, starts to destroy and co-opt and overcome, and I felt as if I was under attack. Finally, I was able to get to the dentist to have it looked at, and the dentist did some examinations and took some x-rays and came to the conclusion that what I was suffering from was something they call root recursion or root resorption. And basically what was happening was my body was attacking the root. It wasn't some bacteria from outside of me, it was actually me fighting myself. Kind of like an autoimmune issue, right? And so now I'm lying in bed with this throbbing pain thinking, why can't I get along with myself? What's wrong with me? That I have this fight going on inside of me. I felt so conflicted. And I couldn't tell which side of me I really, sided with. So now I rely on forces from outside myself to deal with myself, right? So I was taking painkillers, right? So I was bringing in, reinforcements. I was looking for help. I began to really, lose my grip, as you can perhaps see. So I did some research on this root resorption problem, and as I was researching, I was looking at, well, what's being studied now is what we call the human biome, and there's this theory that makes a lot of sense actually, and is recognized already by other non-Western disciplines, but that the biome, the biological matrix that makes up our body can be almost thought of as yet another circulatory system, in our body. And I discovered that, of course, our bodies are made up of cells, human cells, those cells that differentiate from the fertilization of the egg when we are first conceived, and then iterate and reiterate in a beautiful pattern of fractal geometry, becoming the human being. But that our bodies are more than those human cells. That in fact, our bodies are human cells coexisting with a variety of independent, individual organisms, bacteria. And that there are 10 times as many bacteria living in us as there are human cells. Now I was really lost. Now I had no idea who was running the show. And now I felt like, well, the majority of me, 10 times of my mass, is actually this community of all of these individual organisms of great wild variety of bacteria that constitutes me and is actually busily doing the work of being me, processing those thousands of tons of air, food, and water that temporarily are becoming me and gradually dissociating from me. And it was at this time that the kitchen sink clogged up. So I went into the kitchen with the plunger and I started working on the kitchen sink, that deep sucking sound, which resonated down through the pipes and down through the house so I could feel it vibrating on the floor underneath me, and I was trying to get at something I couldn't see, something deep down inside the walls of the house that had stopped the kitchen sink from being able to drain and the water therefore to flow and the kitchen to work and the food to be well made and the dishes to be cleaned and all the things that suddenly came to a halt because of this bottleneck of the kitchen sink. Well, it's expensive to call in the plumber. So I went to the Ace Hardware store and I found on the shelf enzymatic drain cleaning solution. It was a bottle full of organisms in the liquid base that basically eats the gunk that's in your sink. Maybe you've used it. I thought, here's that biome again, coming off the shelf. These bacterial, enzymatic little organisms, and I poured them in the drain, and I found that as they were going down the drain to try to digest the gunk that was in my kitchen sink, I found myself having a strange kind of empathy with the house. I realized that the house was having an intestinal disorder. It had a blockage that needed relief. And I suddenly recognized, well, wait a minute, what is a house anyway? I mean, if my body is 1 part human cells, but 10 parts various bacteria, where does my body end and the rest of the world begin? It became very unclear to me. And I suddenly realized, well, the house is really sort of like part of my body because it's an external shell, it's an exoskeleton. It made me something of an arthropod, if you will. I mean, we wear our houses, right? Like a turtle wears his shell, and we go inside, we shut the door, and then the house has it has an air circulating system, so it's got, its whole respiratory system, It has intakes and exhaust, It has a digestive system that works out the stuff that we don't need, and then it stores the energy in it, just like our fat cells store our energy. The refrigerator stores its energy for the rest of the house, and suddenly I found myself feeling as if who I was extended to include the house. Because certainly here was the house, in particular the kitchen sink, and myself suffering from very similar kinds of dilemmas. Well, the enzymes didn't work. I had to call in a plumber. When we cleared out the sink, the painkillers helped, and my body stopped fighting with itself. Long enough for me to go on with my life and to go on with my day, but I still was wandering in this haze of confusion and uncertainty about myself, who I was, where I ended and the rest of the world began. And yet I do have a son, and I do have many children, and my youngest is Jordan, he's 5. And I'm often driving him around, and in my car, which now I realize is also sort of an extension of myself. I guess I've always been aware of that. You know how when you're riding in your car and you can sort of feel something's wrong with the steering. Because, I just rode over something. It's the same sense of like the way you feel the street beneath your feet in your shoes, right? Your shoes are really sort of part of it. So I found myself with this relationship to my car growing, and then here's my son. I recognized that he and I had even more in common than I had with the car and the house. He and I must have something, some part of our identity must be involving each other. These are the kind of problems that crop up when you decide to become a storyteller. Because one of the hazards of the art form is the habit of animism. Everything has a soul, it seems. Everything has a life to it. Well, I mean, it's throughout stories, right? I mean, the rocks talk to you, right? The trees have an opinion. Everything in the world can sort of have a life of its own. So I oftentimes resort to that sense of the animism that's inherent in storytelling to help manage my relationship with that extension of myself. For example, one day I was trying to, this last summer, trying to get him in the car. We were going to his school, which in the summertime was having a family event, a big pizza party for everybody to come to it. So I had that sense of intention and destination, which is so common with adults. We've got to get there. And he had that sense of presence, which is so common with children, he was where he was anyway. Because wherever you are, there you are. And so I was standing And he was enjoying the leaves on the Japanese maple, which is fine, that's nice, but we had somewhere to go. And I couldn't get him to go into his car seat. And I was becoming frustrated by that because I wasn't really taking the lessons. It's just stop and smell the maple leaf. So I resorted to that habit of sort of anthropomorphizing everything, and I got the seat belt buckles of the car seat, and they started talking to him. Hey, what you doing out there? Hey, come on, we want to go. We've been sitting here all day. It's hot in here. Come on, let's go. Come on, man, we're missing you. Come on, we've been sitting here all this time waiting for you. Oh, and I caught his attention. Oh, then he turned from the maple leaf into the belt buckles. I thought, he got into the car, and I got him buckled. Then he starts talking to the belt buckles. And so now I'm driving the car, and he's having a conversation with the belt buckles, but I had to throw my voice over my shoulder to carry on the conversation with my son, because he's now enlivened with this conversation with the belt buckles. Hey guys, how are you? Well, great, we're doing kid, we're doing great. We don't get around much, but we like to have you with us, because it makes us feel nice and comfy, like we got something to do, because we're holding on to you, boy. Yeah, we're giving you a nice big hug. And I'm driving the car, and yeah, that's great. And they say, where are you going today anyway? Where are you going? He said, oh, I'm going to a pizza party. We're going to have pizza. Now, I'm driving the car, and I'm trying to invent and create the personalities of these belt buckles all while I'm driving the car. And I realized that the belt buckles, they're stuck in the car. They don't know the world. They don't know what's out there in the world. So I get to feign complete ignorance about anything. Oh, that's great. Yeah. What's a party? Oh, well, he has to explain. Well, a party is when people get together and they all have a lot of fun. Fun! That sounds like fun. That sounds like what is fun. Well, fun is when you play and you laugh and everything. Okay, great. So what are you going to do at this party? We're going to eat pizza. He's very excited about that. Oh, great. So what's pizza? Well, now he has to explain that. Well, it's something that you eat. What is eating? They don't know what eating is. They're belt buckles. Well, it's food. You put it in your mouth and you swallow. Oh, well, that sounds real good. What's it made out of anyway? Well, he says, I don't know. He says, I think it's got cheese. And is that all? Is it made of anything else? Well, it's made of God. And then he says, isn't that right, Dad? Like, I haven't been listening to this at all. I haven't been there. I said, isn't what right? What are you talking about? He said, isn't pizza made of God? Well, I realized, we've had conversations about God. Where is God? What is God? And you talk about how, God is hard to pin down. God's everywhere. God's in everything. Well, if God is everywhere and God is in everything, then God must be in pizza, and pizza must be made of God. So I said, yeah, I guess that's right. Pizza is made of God. And suddenly, the day became luminous. And I began to find the answer to my quest of, where I ended and the world began, and who was I anyway. I realized I'm not just me and my son and the house and the car going down the road. I'm this day. I'm that tree over there. I'm Asheville, which is our home. And now here I am. I'm here in Charleston. And I'm this experience, and you're this experience, and I'm you, and you're me, and we're all made of God. And I remember Walt Whitman writing that I will not make poems with reference to a day, but I will make poems, songs, sayings with reference to all days. For looking out at the universe, I find there is not one thing or any particle of a thing but has reference to the soul. Buckminster Fuller put it in his way. He said, "Love is omni-inclusive, progressively exquisite, understanding and tender, and compassionately attuned to other than self. And while humans may not know God directly, they may have and do hover palpitatingly away and towards, and some in totality come closer to God." The empty center at the wheel is what holds the wheel together. Thanks for being together.